that part, with the oha, really an opportunity to show our relationship to our aina.
Maika i Kalo i oha is one of those olelo no eo that we learn when we're elementary school kind, and it keeps on being relevant. Mo. As I'm looking at everything that you guys produced, and you folks as being the oha of these kupuna in this epic film, I hope there's a sense that people can see the quality of the work that you folks did.
This episode is a mixed conversation flowing from chiefly roles to cultural concepts and an up-close look at the art of Hōlua sledding. Joining me today are Hōlua sled crafters Tom Pohaku Stone and Ann Stone, along with historian Kēhaunani Abad. Thank you for being here. Today I wanted to try something a little different with our talk story sessions. What I wanted to do today is to do a reactionary episode. So the idea is, obviously you guys have just seen the episodes, just like everybody at home. And so I want to talk about episode 5, but I don't want to dictate too much. I more want to talk about the feeling behind it. We've introduced you, but obviously, Uncle Pohaku, you're, reviving that art of Hōlua sleds. I think it's going to be really fun to talk about that.
Hey, I tried.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It'll be really fun to kind of get into that a little bit. You brought your lovely wife who helps you in the work, and so it's wonderful. And thank you for being here, Kehau. Wonderful. This is gonna be really good. I'm really curious as to each of your perspectives, because the audiences in Hawaii are so vast. All kinds of different people, and I thought this would be a fun opportunity to just kind of sit and let's discuss an episode and see how you're feeling about it when you watch it. Episode 5 is really the story of Kaiana's return. Yeah, but we start with Kamehameha, with the children, and this scene was something that I thought would be really fun, and also a way to kind of put out there. I think a lot of times as Kanaka people or people from Hawaii, sometimes it's good for people to understand the origins of where words come from, and really this whole scene was built purely to talk about ohana, and what that means and where it comes from. I don't know. What was your guys' reaction or response to that?
Maika i Kalo i oha is one of those olelo no eo that we learn when we're elementary school kind, and it keeps on being relevant. Mo. And that sense that, you can tell the goodness of the Kalo plant from the offshoots, from the oha. And oha, of course, is the root of ohana, family. So, what it actually made me think of is, I hope that the production itself, as I'm looking at everything that you guys produced, and you folks as being the oha of these kupuna in this epic film, I hope there's a sense that people can see the quality of the work that you folks did as being a sign of the greatness of these chiefs, that greatness is still being exemplified in this amazing work that you folks put together. So you guys made me feel really proud, seeing what was on screen. And so that's one of the thoughts that hit me, that you folks as oha are doing our kupuna proud.
For me, on a very personal level, it very much reminded me of seeing our son when he was at Kānekapolei, at different, field trips, going to different lo'i, getting those lessons even today, hearing those stories, that we are familiar with now, but thinking about how that has a connection over time.
That's cool.
That is cool. Well, for me, that part, with the oha, really an opportunity to show our relationship to our aina. And that not only the aina, but the vai. And why we use the word vai as wealth, because if you malama all of that, the vai, the aina, the kalo together, you as a society living in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, we just continue to proliferate,
Right.
to grow.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Well, it's also interesting to note, like, this idea of sustainability is a huge concept around the world, and people are trying to have this return to simplicity. And I think the one thing that's missing in that conversation is the real connection to the land. It's not just we need to grow, we need to have these things from, a Hawaiian perspective or a Kanaka perspective. There's so much care because we equate these things to ancestor.
Mm-hmm.
We equate these things to, in some forms, even deity, right? So if you have that kind of love and care, then you have no other choice but to, multiply, perpetuate, and to make sure that it's sustainable for not just you, but for the next generations and all of that. So there was a lot to be said in this scene.
Yeah.
The lessons that we can reconsider, and how we look at things. And
we never look at today in our modernistic way of life. We don't take the time to really stop and see something like this, right, that comes to life on the screen that, opens the door for us to really look at our community and how we are as, local natives and how we interact with our children that our kupuna did in that time, because there's always that sense that we were, well, even in a couple scenes where it was like, all these children have to get out of here and stuff like that. But it's not really like that. I mean, it was more the silence of learning,
right,
but being present.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's so beautiful to see Kamehameha himself, right, being that
Right.
Mahi Kalo.
Right.
And, it because it's such a fundamental motif for us, right, that the ali'i are those who feed and who care for Hāloa, right? In our moku auhau, right, Hāloa is our older brother.
Right.
First comes Hāloa, the Kalo, and then the chief. So to see this chief caring for Kalo, caring for Hāloa, it just reminds everybody that he is doing that quintessential thing that all chiefs are expected to do: care for Hāloa and thereby care for your people, be able to feed your people. So yeah, it's such a great scene to kind of anchor who Kamehameha is, right, and what he was about. And because he's one of these famous chiefs, right, who had such an intimate relationship with his life as this Mahi'ai. He was known to have, like, people of Kohala, that's where my ohanas from my puleiwi, there's still memory of him having such intimate knowledge of his lo'i at Iole. Those were some of his favorite lo'i, that if he was elsewhere, say he was in Waimea, he would be able to know which lo'i had Kalo at what stage of growth, and which one he was ono for. And so he would specifically, he would say, I want this Kalo from this lo'i. And that's how well he knew what was going on and how familiar he was with being in that lo'i. So yeah, he would know Kalo to his patches to that specificity. Even if he was elsewhere, he would know which ones are ready for harvest.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to Kaina, the actor. And it's funny to call him an actor because he doesn't present himself as an actor. I mean, he is a Kalo farmer. That's what he does. And the preparation for him was so easy. I mean, like, this scene was so just who he is. It really is an embodiment of what he does, right? He deals with children. He teaches kids. That's how he spends his day. Like, he works in the fields and he works with children and they work in the fields together. So it was actually one of those really great moments when we'd have a scene that just matches. And kids, they bring such a levity to a scene.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
Yeah, they're so fun, and they're soaking it all in. Like, we have so much footage of those kids, and they're just enjoying themselves, having a really good time. And then with Kaina, doing his presentation, like, he's so good. Like, actually, there was something that happened in this scene that he was only speaking to them in Hawaiian, not just in the scene.
Right.
So, like, even when the cameras wasn't rolling, he's talking to all of them in Hawaiian. And if the kids not understanding, kids are so observant and their minds are so sharp and fresh that when he would speak to them, they understand through gesture, they understand through motion, they understand through the tone of his voice what he was saying. And it would be because he would ask them, do you guys understand what I'm, he says, in this line, I'm going to be talking about this. And like, do you get it? And they responded. He'll say it again in Hawaii. Do you get it? Moakaka, you get it? And then they're like, yes, yes. And so, I. And so he was really dictating how that scene went. And that was a really beautiful thing with the kids, that he did all his communication in Hawaiian, and they reacted and responded, and they understood based purely on his mannerisms, because they get it, like kids are. It was such a wonderful scene.
Definitely.
Throughout the whole episode, I thought he was fabulous.
Yeah.
He looked so comfortable.
Yeah.
For someone who's never acted, who's never been in front of a camera like that before, he was so comfortable in himself and in the role, and that just showed all the way through the whole episode.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that brought out something else, is that, if we look at it, the way that episode went with him, is it just didn't show Kamehameha as this warrior chief,
right,
as that fighting battle was everything. It was more about being interactive with our people,
right.
So
yeah,
I thought that was a beautiful side of it.
Yeah, there is something else in this episode that I wanted to see what your thoughts are. And we all in Hawaii, I think everybody knows, or at least understands a little bit about the Kanekapolei family, the Kanekapolei Foundation. And we were so blessed to have Auntie Kekuhi step into this role as Kanekapolei, Ke'oakuaula's mother. Yes. And I don't know, like, how did you guys feel when you saw her? Because she's not an actor either, but granted, a performer, a composer, and, just interactive in all things, Hawaii. But she was just such a beautiful find, and what was your guys' reaction?
I always get chicken skin to hear her oli.
Yeah.
She's so powerful and expressive when she olis, and to see that on screen and to just feel that kind of come out was just, I'm getting chicken skin right now.
So good. So good.
Yeah, she's so powerful. Yeah, so powerful. When we think about who Kanekapolei is, you need somebody with that kind of stature, right?
Yes.
This venerable Wahine of colonial Pu'u, and just comes through. By the way, side note, that's great-grandmother of Poahi, Keli Poahi.
Yeah. Well, one thing I love, like when you just take the idea, like, bringing Kekuhi in is one thing, but Kanekapolei herself, the greatest description I ever saw of her was Captain Vancouver describing her. And he said she was so tall that he only came up to her chest. And Kekuhi may not have that size, but she commands the entire presence of the camera.
Yeah.
And I did want to point out, because you mentioned, her oli and all of that. I didn't write that. I didn't write her chanting. What she did is because it's so natural for her, and she has such a great expression of her, Hawaiianness through that voice and through that expression, that she chanted her lines. Nobody asked her to do that.
Yep.
I would have never even conceived of her to do that. So on the page, it's really just this interaction between mother and son, right? And, obviously trying to represent this maternal, strength for Ke'oa, who is himself a very powerful leader. And, but for her to take that and know the best way to relay this message, the point of what I want, should be done through chant. And
that is Kekuhi.
Oh man, and she just did it on the day. So like you say, chicken skin.
Yeah.
Even for, I'm standing behind, looking at the monitor, going, "What the heck is going on?"
Well, like, just her knowledge of protocol, all that kind of stuff.
Well, and it's one of these moments that gives us a true look into Hawaiian traditions, and because I mean, we read about it. Oh yeah, all the time. Like the way people are greeting and lamenting, and chants don't all have to be written and memorized and controlled. That's our inability to recreate and to live in the way they did in the past. But then you have, people like Auntie, that it's still a part of her.
Yep.
Yeah.
So when she did that, I was like, wow, audiences are going to see something.
Yeah.
Like when she does that, it's so Hawaiian.
Yeah.
I couldn't have even conceived of that. Like, it was just so beautiful.
I so loved how it was, like you said, just spontaneous. And so, people have a sense sometimes that Oli and Mele are, up on stage, time for performance, or in ceremony. And that's when it's so beautiful to see that, this is just a moment with a mother and her son. And there's a place for Oli, there's a place for that, deep sense of bringing it out in this way, and she just does it so naturally, right? And it's just, that was a special moment,
special find, and we had some really solid people auditioning for that part as well, and I do want to acknowledge that there was some incredible, mana wahine that were stepping in, but also looking at, Cliff Curtis playing this character and just like matching two people together. It just fit in the right way. And, he was so respectful of her and her time. And she was such a professional on set.
Oh, she is.
She was such a professional on set.
Yeah.
And to the point to where I'm wanting to make sure, no, if you need anything, make sure you're, because she's just like, she's fine. I have what I need. And, but there's times where, no, we want to take care of you. Is there anything we can do? But she was so wonderful. I definitely wanted to kind of make sure we mentioned her a little bit.
Well, that she was able to rise up to the level of Cliff Curtis. I would imagine most people would have never acted and never did a film like this, and there she is, with this, mega star, and him being, his amazing performance, and she's just right up there. She just matches it.
Well, it does go to, just to that point, and this is one thing that I do want to stress with Hawaii audiences is there is something to be said though about, Kanaka being asked to play Kanaka, right? Some people can dial it in and they can just find that pocket. I'm not one of them. I'm really not, and it's okay. I can.
I'm with you.
I can work it, but I can't step into that in the same way. But and that in and of itself is a talent. But for those that cannot be removed from that Kanaka inside of them, so obviously here you can see Kaina. It's just part of who he is. You cannot take that part away from you. It wouldn't work otherwise.
Right.
And, Auntie Kekuhi is exactly one of those people as well. You just cannot remove it. As a matter of fact, it becomes so empowering that, and I love Cliff. He's one of my favorite people in the world. But you're right, the two of them together, you can see, this is, they work together. And he's put in so much work, and he is truly one of our best, as far as Pacifica people and in this industry. He is one of our best. But then you get somebody like Auntie Kekuhi to say, hey, this is your role. This is what you're going to play. And I don't ever remember anybody ever saying that she needed help with anything, that she needed, support in the acting.
I don't think she ever
rejected. So she's
on it.
It was wonderful to see her.
Yeah, she's always on it.
Yeah, it really speaks to, the level of talent here in Hawaii. We might not have a huge acting community, but Kekuhi is a performer.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, as a musician in hula, and that really came through her excellence in that area.
I think this is important to note. Thank you for this, because most of the people that grow up in Hawaii have some form of performing background, right? Whether it's hula, whether it's singing, playing music, and it's understanding that those are translatable into this industry.
Yeah.
They're translatable, I wasn't good, but I grew up, my family performed, And from the time I was 2 years old, I was expected to be on stage and help. Really, back then it was help to make money to pay rent, but it was a thing. It was something we did. And I mean, we were so small. I remember my dad had these big conch shells, and we were so small we had to walk up like with our hands like this so he could put the conch shell in our hands so we could go out on stage and blow it, because they were too big for us to just pick up.
Yeah.
But it's and that's, I think that background is really important, and I think we just need to understand, like, a lot of people in Hawaii don't picture themselves, in film, or don't picture themselves behind a camera or in front of a camera. But understanding the transition is actually much easier than they think.
I'm one of those.
I think a lot of it comes from, that history of, where the culture is just being used for tourism.
Right.
And a generation or two more really got taught that it wasn't good to put yourself out and to be expressive, and that it was only good for certain things. Whereas now, like, when our son was in the Kulakaiapuni, the kids are always getting put forward, getting called upon, and it's teaching them, that it's not just for show, and they can use their culture as a vehicle to do that. And I think there are generations that lost out on that opportunity to see that, and so they see, I'm shame, I cannot do that. Well, I just backyard seeing kind. But I love seeing that expression coming out, that it's translatable, like you said, that if you play music, you're a performer. If you dance hula, you're a performer. You can step forward and do this kind of thing.
Also in this episode, we're starting to really kind of see Ka'ahumanu's arc. She's moving from where she's been introduced into where she wants to be. Her father, Ke'eaumoku, has been kind of trying to get her to be, he believes that she's important, believes that she's a part of Kamehameha's story and what he needs. And yet we're really getting the sense that, and I don't know, as a father, I think I really, really understood this, that it's one thing to say, my children are special. I love them. They're going to do something amazing, but they better do it my way. Like, it's like, you can only work if they do it the way that I see it. And we're starting to see a little bit of, we're starting to see that her influence on Kamehameha wasn't really the way that he saw it, and I know that feeling. And I think that's why it was something that I thought would be interesting to start to explore, and see where she's coming. Yeah.
She's an amazing character through this whole thing. And of course, in real history, right, Ka'ahumanu has maybe some of the greatest influence in the stream of history that any one individual might have had.
Yeah.
And to see her in this part of her trajectory, she's kind of coming into her own, and she's saying, there's a sense of, you can see her developing that sense of chiefly stature, that she's going to lead. She's going to, I play her role, that, because chiefesses were so important behind the scenes, and oftentimes in front of the scenes too. I mean, there were women like Kehaunani who were ruling, amazing women that had a lot of sway in the politics. So I feel like she's, if she's able to, in this scene, to really come through, she's going to be able to, do more. And so we sense that she's on the verge of something. So I love how you guys played at it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it is that thing, I have 4 daughters, and
lucky you.
I have 4 daughters, and in the way that we were introduced to her, she's being told what to do. She's being told what needs to happen, and she is important, right? The idea is she is important, but we as parents have expectations for our children, and if it doesn't happen the way we thought, then we think they're not fulfilling it, or they're not doing it. Yeah. But she's getting to the point, like Ka'ahumanu at this point is understanding, like, look, you brought me here, you've asked me to do this, I'm doing it, but I can't just sit back, and like, I have to do this. Like, in order for me to survive in this world, I have to start doing it my way. And it's starting to bring a little bit of conflict with the father, and yet we can see that she is starting to gain, her influence and all of that. And one thing that's really great in this episode too is she becomes the facilitator between Kaiāulu and Kamehameha, right? That's her influence. She's starting to bring the merging of these guys together.
I mean, in tradition, that she had that persona to bring these ali'i nui together, and she saw her role, even though her father was trying to keep her out of it. Ke'amoku, that's all he was. He was sticking to the old ways in a sense, but the new ways were here already.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Certainly, like what you were saying, that role of bringing things together, we're expected of chiefesses. And, she's a product of generations of purposeful connecting of ali'i lines. In her genealogy, right, she carries the blood of Lone Kahaupu, who's a mo'i of Kauai. She carries the blood of Kanekapolei Aivi, who is really arguably the most sacred chiefess that Hawaii Island had ever produced. She has, of course, the blood of Maui chiefs. The Kekuhi is her tutu. And then she has the Mahi lines too. Ha'ai is one of her kupuna as well. Ha'ai, who's brother of Alapai and kupuna of Kamehameha. So she has all of these lineages. And of course, Ke'amoku himself is this, amazing chief of Kona. So that was not by accident. Right. That was a purposeful thing. So in herself, she has the power to pull all of these conversations together, to bring people together, because she is who she is.
Right.
And so her being placed within Kamehameha's court as one of his wives was absolutely purposeful, and the kind of weight that she's carrying, knowing that that's her role, it must have been tremendous.
Right.
So and she you can see that she's coming in and she's starting to really be that.
The other attribute that she had, at least based on how I interpret the way that she's described and the events, the things, again, we have the privilege of knowing, what she goes on to do and all of that, is understanding she must have had this fascination with the outside. She must have had this foresight to understand, how are we preparing ourselves for what's to come? How can we keep a pulse on, what these foreign men are bringing, and is it good? Is it bad? The good, can we utilize? The bad, can we find ways to hold back? And so inevitably it makes sense that she would position herself with Kaiāulu, and he having actually had that experience, and I love this scene where she brings Kamehameha, Kaiāulu together, because even though it's a scene about the two of them getting to know each other and really kind of speaking their opinions and their thoughts, it's all facilitated by her, which is something that she's probably,
correct.
Instantly she understood that there would be a benefit to this, And so, it's a scene about these two men sizing each other up, but it's really the understanding that those men were already sized up by her, and she already understood that bringing them together was going to be beneficial, So in a roundabout way, it's really it's about her, the whole that whole coming together.
I have to agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I think it speaks very well to the nuance that's in Hawaiian culture, because so often, when you're outside or you're not from Hawaii and not familiar with a deeper level of the history, you think it's just, very segregated. Men, women, ali'i, maka'ainana. It was more nuanced than that. And women had political power. They had power. And Ka'aumanu's character, as a real live person, she was incredibly intelligent and powerful and used that. And this is starting to show, her personality. Yeah.
It's, in some ways, it's always nice to kind of bring these parallels to universal stories that people understand, so that when they're watching it, they're like, this makes sense to me. I'm not sure why, but really it's our way of highlighting this Arthurian character, King Arthur, his favorite knight, Lancelot, and Guinevere, the wife to King Arthur. And this is the moment where we kind of see them coming together and kind of building that, but where the stories, that the Arthurian literature that's all legend in Europe, and over here it's a real story. Like it's we've seen it play out, and
we've lived it.
We lived it, and so that was exciting to be able to get into that. And also a fun side note, that was the very last scene that we shot when we were doing the production, shooting all of these episodes. And so Kaina had gone home, and we shot in Kaina's taro patch. So that's at his place. And
that's good to know.
That's why you can just see, like, he's so at home there. Like, he literally was like, oh, I can get this job done while we're filming. You know what I mean? Like, he got to go in there, and we got to see his hands and him working and really getting a feel for what it's like to be in there. That was that scene was also shot. Brian Mendoza was able to get in there and just really kind of like show us, like, watching that scene. It makes you feel like, oh, I feel like I'm in it. I feel like I know what it feels like to be in that taro patch, and just with the mud, the water, and
it's always great to be
Kalo.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah. So that was his taro patch. Yeah. I want to get into Hōlua, but before we do that, I do want to mention Waine. I want to mention her because there's one thing about Kaiana coming home. Like, in our story, it's clearly a moment of, a wonderful reunion. It's Kaiana being able to finally be back, on the Aina, and Jason does such a good job of capturing this moment, and all the actors, the family, all coming together. But there's that little tension, obviously, with his brother Namake and Kekuhi. And so that's all bubbling in the background. But Waine is an interesting part of this story, right? Like, her having traveled. One thing that we'll be able to dig into a little later is we get to know a little bit more about her, about the things that she brought home, because she did bring a big chest of things home with her. And we know, like, we actually built her character based on the things that she brought home.
Wow.
And so she brought home, like, these beautiful dresses, the whole, I don't know how many pieces it takes to do those dresses back then, but they mentioned that she brought everything. So, like, the bonnet, the dress, the thing underneath, the whatever, the corsets and all that.
Is that right?
So she had several of those. She traveled throughout Europe, so she had some relics from there, and she had beautiful china, and it was the dresses though that we honed in on. And it was like she had a fascination with the dresses and the material, and so that's why we made her a worker of silks and material in Zamboanga, and then gave her that backstory of being a couple maker, because it was just a really cool thing to be like, wow, you kind of get to know somebody about what the things they were interested in. Like, everything you bring back during that time, it had to mean something to you, because, you're traveling, and it's hard to carry this stuff around. And so I love that character.
That was a good piece, that was part of that episode, because, I just took away, it didn't really take away from what was really occurring, but it added, a secondary backstory of the journey of this Wahine, and her, traditional practice and what she was gaining out of it in the, in her journey, in her great, however long it took her to return home. I thought it was beautiful.
As a former archivist, I actually love that you created this backstory for her from her things, because in the archives, we look at all these, whether it be photos or documents or personal effects, and we think about the stories that go with those. And I just love that you created that for her. It would be very plausible That was her storyline. And just to hear that, I'm thrilled.
All the way to the account of, so somebody had written a description about her and mentioned that she had this dyed purple streak in her hair. And I just thought that was really cool. So she must have enjoyed, the dyes and the different colors, because that's a big thing in Hawaii. Like we had such a fullness of colors here, in the kapa and just in all different areas. And it was because we have such an abundance of different types of vegetation. But, throughout the Pacific, we were the ones that had just this beautiful layering and swath of colors that were used in the things that we did. And, painting, stuff in the hair or just whatever. But her to have had this purple streak, I just thought was, man, like it gives you an idea of what kind of person this is,
little radical.
Yeah.
With the type.
Yeah. Also speaks a little bit to that. I think it was you who had mentioned this earlier, sir, off camera, but the nature of Hawaiians wanting to explore.
Oh, yeah.
To find different ways to build themselves and all of that kind of stuff. And she represents that for sure.
As modern people, we get so caught up on just getting on a plane and being someplace else in a couple of hours that it's hard for us to envision how 100, 200, whatever years ago that people got around, and Hawaiians were curious, and Hawaiians got around, and they were highly recruited to be on the sailing vessels, whether it be with the Hudson Bay Company to go work in the Pacific Northwest, or on the whaling ships, or making their way to Canton, and they were highly recruited to the point where across the Pacific, the outside term for anyone, a Pacific Islander was Kanaka. And how people in the Western Pacific now refer to themselves as Kana, because they were using Kanaka in the Hawaiian sense to refer to anyone who they recruited to be on the boats.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
That's great. Waine kind of provides that. And I always thought it was just so fun, the thought that, Kaiana is traveling. We're following him. He's this first Hawaiian chief to ever step foot there. Like, well, holy crap, there's a woman already here. She really was. Like, it was just, I just wonder, what that would have felt like. Like, holy, what the hell? Like, I haven't even ever seen one of these ships, and I got on one, and now I'm here. And how the hell did you get here? You know what I mean?
Can you imagine, like, how local people, when they see other local people any place else in the world, we automatically are like, oh, he must have been just so thrilled to see another Hawaiian, being so far from home and amongst all these strangers. Right. It must have been a real touchstone for you.
Right, and she was quite assimilated. It was actually it was a Portuguese fort that she was at. So, her ability to communicate and to really build a life. Like I've mentioned this before, but like stepping off of a boat and saying, I think I could live here. In a Spanish fort, language you don't know. There's commerce, stuff that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
And she just was bold enough to say, I got this. Like it was her choice. She wasn't.
It was her choice. Yeah.
She wasn't like told that she needed to get off. She was like, I want to stay here. So anyway, I really love her, and to obviously Sisa is such a great, she has such a powerful presence, and she's so wonderful on set, but just a great actor. But for her to be able to stand, I mean, you need someone that's kind of can stand toe to toe with Jason too, because we've seen in episode 3 and 4 that she's not a pushover. She's not someone that's like, look, your title, your rank has nothing to do with where we are right now. Yeah. When she meets him out in Zamboanga, she's like, look, you can say all you want, but she's like, you really shouldn't be talking to me in the tone you're talking to me. Like, you're a chief back home, you're not a chief here. I run this place. I know how to do this. Like, if anything, you should be listening to me. And so even I know this isn't in our episode, but in the previous episode, when they're having this conversation, we set up this dynamic where she's speaking English, he's speaking Hawaiian, and it's who's going to bend first. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who's going to be the one to like shift, because she's like, you should speak English. And he's like, you know what I mean? Like, I really want to take this opportunity to start to talk about Hōlua. Because of the scene that is leading us in there, the scene in the lo'i where Kamehameha, Kaiana are sizing each other up, and now it's time to see, well, let's see if there's an opportunity for you to join us. And he challenges him in Hōlua. And I wanted to have this conversation specifically with the both of you because, along with your work in trying to revive this art form, this is a real art form. It's a real practice of our ancient people. You guys were also kind enough to lend your time and actually help us build these Hōlua. That you guys actually put the work in and made. How many did you guys make?
12.
12 total for this production.
These aren't just like, we didn't go about this in just in a way that was like, let's figure out if we can like put some of these things together. You guys actually lent your time. And so I wanted us to have the conversation a bit about Hōlua. Can you give us a little background?
Well, I would add to not just time, but a little bit of cocoa, a little blood, sweat, and tears into all of
goes into whatever we make, but they are real. I mean, they are not, showpieces. They're not just production pieces. They actually are papa Hōlua that can be ridden anywhere that you want to go ride.
Yeah.
And a lot of work went into it. It was a great opportunity for us to be able to share through this production that Jason was that interested in it, that it would be, that the world could actually see it for what it was done. Yeah, there's cuts in there and pieces like that, in the filming, but it is what took place in that scene is actually the reality of what really happens. So, and death is one of them, injuries are one of them. I mean, my left leg that's all part of the injuries. So.
I think people would be surprised to know, when we watched it, our initial reaction was, oh, they listened to some of the, the things that we had talked about, or that Pohaku had talked about specifically about Hōlua. And, there were slides that were a mile in length, that would fit in perfectly with what was shown in the production. There were neighborhood slides that were, for the village, to people have fun on. There were ritual aspects of Hōlua. There are burials on the slides where people didn't make it, where they crashed. This was for real.
And it was abundant everywhere throughout Hawaii. Waine, right here, had a really large slide coming off of that. And it went right to what used to be the harbor here, right? Of Ko, right? The village of Ko. It went right there. And Mamala was one of the great surfer sledders of that era in time. So, and then you go to Kauai, and that scene was fantastic of them racing down, that Kahua Hōlua and off the cliff. That's a reality.
Yeah.
That is the traditional way that it gets done. And, some of them come to mind, Kaāulu or Mano or Manu. Because they have two names for it. That's on the island of Kauai. That's in the back of Waimea Canyon where the Wailele, where the waterfall comes off. Yeah.
The track goes right off of it.
It goes right off of that, and they would fly.
That's great.
I mean, I have I've never ridden it, but then I know it's there, And then you have,
Kanaka.
Yeah. And then you have the Kanaka slide up in Kēhaunani that people see it, but they don't realize that thing went all the way off the point.
Yeah.
It's only probably about a 40-foot drop, but it's still, you're coming from a mile up, you're doing, we know for a fact that the reality is, you can do anywhere between 40 miles an hour to 80 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And that's a reality.
Yeah.
We know that we've done it. But because, we've got so much development around these places that people just don't even realize it's there.
Well, I'm glad to hear there's sort of a reality, an authenticity to the cliff, because I wasn't actually sure how you were going to respond to that when we first did it, because I had only been told this story by a professor of mine, Uncle Bill Wallace.
Right.
And, he's from Molokai, and he had told me that there was a Hōlua track, a Hōlua slide that went off of a cliff that was about 200 feet up to the water. And when he told me that, it was just the image that I had in my mind stuck with me all the way from that. So when we sat to work on this, I said, I don't know of any Hōlua slides on Hawaii Island that do that, but I was like, but we have to do that. Like, we have to get that thing to fly off a cliff.
I thought that was fantastic.
Oh,
that showed the reality of what it was. And, I've been trying to reconstruct or allow me to go do it. National Park up over in Kalo, Kalapana, right? Well, not Kalapana, but
Kalaupapa.
Kalaupapa, thank you. Mahalo.
Whoa.
Yeah. That slide, it actually, it did it one time, but that was before the channel closed between that volcano and the cliffs of Molokai. Mm. But what is there is where they have the cross, right? That's a lele, where that was the process of Hōlua. Eventually, you would discard the sled itself, and it's a leap of faith.
Yeah.
And the wind comes right from off of the Pele of Molokai and right up through the fracture in that crater. And when you jump, the wind just puts you right back up. And that's what Bill Wallace is talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, because him and I talked a lot about that particular slide. And then you have Pahala. And that's what that scene reminded me of Pahala, is because it was that vertical. It went into a crater, and we always assume ocean, but craters had water.
Yeah.
So, I know that one in Pahala went right into the, just like, what do we call Salt Lake, right? Where you used to have water in there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So that was a vertical slide.
Yeah.
Very vertical.
I think a lot of times too, like if you were to go today to like the Kona Coast and you went to Honaunau or you went to Keoho or Honokahau and saw the Hōlua slides that are there, people tend to forget that's 200 or so odd years of neglect where people haven't been preserving it and finishing it with, cinder and dirt and dried grass, so that you could be going, because now you look at it and you think, how are these crazy people like sliding down that? Well, they weren't sliding down that. They were actually...
It was maintained.
It was maintained,
yeah.
It was well groomed. So.
The cool thing is a lot of them are still there.
Yes,
they are.
They are still there. And so when you go to see them, like Kanaka in Keoho, we hear about and read about them or whatever, but when you see one, they're massive.
Very massive.
They're tall. They're wide. And you think about the amount of work that went into it. So you can be in awe of the act of being on Hōlua. And like, wow, that's like crazy, right?
Yeah.
But then you think too about what it took, the support system,
to create it,
and then to maintain it, like you're talking about,
right?
Because you look at that and it's like, wow, just maintaining this so that it is rideable would have been nuts. The amount of pohaku needed,
right?
It's far more than any of our biggest heiau, for instance.
Yes,
far.
Yes.
You're talking about a process that took hundreds of years, perhaps, to make something that large, and then to connect it in a ritualistic way or religious way, to build all the heiau that had to go with the various components of it. And
see, that's the thing that is fascinating to me. It's far more complex and really speaks to like the intelligence of a people, when it's not like, hey, let's just build something that we can just like X Games and all that. There's ceremony involved, there's protocol involved, and I remember this was many years ago, but I was watching Merry Monarch, and they were telling the story. I apologize, I don't remember the name of the chief that challenged Pele, and so he challenged her because the volcano was erupting, and the thought was,
Kahavale.
Kahavale, yeah. And wanting to race down, before he's hit with lava, and like that type of origin story. Like, how real is that? Like, how is Hōlua placed, like, deeper than just X Games fun? Like,
well, I mean, just going based on that one story that William Ellis actually retells, but that slide and that village was in the pathway of what we call the Southeast Rift Zone. And the actual name is Kahōlua o Pele. So, and that's where
Hōlua o Pele.
Yeah. And that's where that slide was. Right there, and there was another one further down towards Kumakahi, that I think is still there. It's part of Kamehameha school lands. But I think that one out there is still there.
Yeah.
So the last time I saw it, it was in 95, 96.
Still there, for sure.
Well, so this is just a general question. This is just more for me. What was it that sparked your interest to say, this art form is not as prolific, it's not being, practiced or done, that would lead you to do the work that you've done? Because you really are locating and restoring Hōlua tracks, Hōlua slides, and even the art form of building and putting them together. Like, where does that even come from? Like, to the need for you to pursue?
Honestly, it came from my grandfather, from my tutukane, because I hadn't actually seen one, but while I was growing up with him, he would always take me to go tea leaf slide, mud slide, then eventually above Pololo, there used to be the mango groves. He used to have me jump tree to tree down the valley wall. Yeah, seriously. And then he would tell me stories about this craft. And in 94, or it started in 93, I just realized that nobody knew anything about it. And so in writing a simple paper, I opted to write about my family history. And there was only one place I'd actually ever saw it. It was a mosaic on the wall at, is it McGregor?
Yeah, in Hōlua Beach Park.
I'd seen it, somebody had done a mosaic in the 50s or 40s or something like that. I don't know. But my tutor used to take me there and show it to me and say, this is what Hōlua looks like. And that just carried on. And so I realized the intricacies of the construction of it was astounding. You have to build it to be able to withstand these extreme speeds and friction on the ground. If you build it incorrectly, it'll just come apart.
Yeah.
So I just carried on the knowledge that was all part of it. And so all the Papa Hōlua we made for, this production it's all traditional. It's not my style of lashing. It's our kupuna style of lashing. However old it might be. Hōlua means to be two together in everything, all the way to the spirit. And so when we started lashing our first one, Keahi Okekai, we just continued lashing together. It became a part of our life.
It's certainly been a metaphor for our relationship together.
That's actually amazing.
Yeah. And, that first one, there was blood spilled and it was painful and we had to communicate and, listen to each other because like lashing a canoe, you have to maintain that tension. And you have to work together to hold the lashing in place and put it together. And this was the first time Pohaku had put together a sled. So he was going off of descriptions, in arts and crafts of Hawaii. Right. He hadn't actually physically seen one. Ones that people had done in modern times. Your cousin's Hōlua sled, but not one, like, for example, at the Bishop Museum. So it was really, it's been a metaphor for 31 years. Yeah.
And that's what makes that scene so awesome to me.
Yeah.
It showed that you have to be in tune
right
with that other person.
Right.
And you have to trust that Hōlua sled that you're both going to survive it. And that's what made that such a beautiful scene.
It was, so, Pohaku always talks about the kauna behind Hōlua, ho'olua, to make two things, come together. And that's that part where Jason, puts his head down and really is focusing. It's what Pohaku's talking about, that commitment. And you didn't know that Pohaku thinks like that commitment is everything in Hōlua. And then, of course, he won. So it was perfect.
And that head going down, the only thing that's up, if you can't see it, even with the camera, is your eyes are not looking down at the ground. Your eyes are focused.
Right.
It's just your whole body's positioned for maximum forward thrust. Your body weight is into that downhill run. Mm-hmm. And that's what I thought that made the scene work so beautifully. It's just looking at him and Kamehameha both, commit to that moment after the other two had fallen off. So.
Yeah. Well, I want to mahalo you for being here, both of you. I love how this conversation turned into, as we're talking about, Hōlua, I'm looking at the two of you and, just that the both of you sitting there and working on production for us. And the tension must always be
it's tension all the time.
I just love that people are understanding too that, there is a difference between, production props and real craftsmanship. Yeah. And for your commitment to allow us to have something genuine and real was culturally important to us because
I'm proud.
Yeah, we wanted production to be led with culture, and any times where something real could be infused, even in this, Hollywood is, people call it out all the time. It's a fake world. It's not necessarily real, but when we can find moments to bring the reality in and to let people know that this wasn't a brushed over prop. This was something that took a lot of hard work from two individuals that are dedicated to this craft and that put this together for us. And so for that, truly, mahalo to you. I'm really glad that the scene is jumping out.
To all of you.
We're
everyone.
Really proud to have been a part of that.
We're definitely proud to have been a part of it. And just hope people want to learn more about that component of our traditions, right? Because it's a very unknown one. And, we don't want it to go the way of, like, surfing, for example, right? Mm.
And
we want to keep it alive traditions.
I would say, I think it's important to remember TV, film, it's not a documentary, and even documentaries get it wrong. But it should be used as a vehicle to do further, to learn more, as an opportunity to go, I didn't even know this even existed.
Right. Yes.
Where can I go from here? I as a history major, I appreciate when detail is given to historical accuracy, but I know that that's not always possible in production. So if people take it as a learning opportunity, I think that's a huge step forward.
Well, thank you for saying that. Yeah, because that's really what, to be honest, all of this is just really a culmination of I'm a Hawaiian studies major. Right? That was my background. And it's just a showcase of Hawaiian studies, Hawaiian history, all of that stuff. It's really what, at the core of it, that's all this could be. It's just all the things that I found super fascinating, and the things that Jason and I sit and just geek over and, talk about, around the campfire or whatever it is, like for us to just be able to, even our own family stories, finding ways to like bring that to life and So, and in this case, I mean, what a great opportunity for us to showcase something that you guys have dedicated so much time to. And
thanks, Frank.
I just thought it would be great for the world to see. And now in this case, for us to be able to sit and talk about mahalo nui. Thank you so much for Kalo.
Kalo mai, that's not getting up and...
Yeah, no, it's all good. I just want to thank, all three of you here. This reactionary episode, I think, was fun. Maybe we'll do another one. But, for now, mahalo, please.
Yeah.
Just know that we're so grateful for it.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for amazing.
Mahalo nui to our viewers and listeners for joining us as we dug deeper into the brilliance and burdens of Hawaii's chiefs beyond what was experienced in the Chief of War show. I'm Pa'akai Sibbett. Until next time, aloha.